lovely Empire people, my name is Rosa, and I'm going to be doing some makeup tutorials for you. You may know me on the field as Sparrow of the Wardens of the Grateful Hearth. I play a lovely little Verishkan Briar, and she's delightful. The aim of this series is basically a bunch of makeup tutorials designed primarily at people who don't know anything about makeup, apart from when they do it in a tent 4 times a year. So this is very much getting back to basics, you know, learning about all the ins and outs of specific nations and specific lineages, and then if it gets popular, maybe some specific archetypes, and then we'll see. So first things first, hopefully you can forgive me for the lack of proper equipment. I am not a YouTuber or a beauty guru. I am filming this on my phone in my childhood bedroom because we're under quarantine. And if we notice, my skin is absolutely horrible because of quarantine, but my skin is often horrible both before and after extended periods of time camping, so I think that it gives this series a nice little pinch of realism. But yeah, forgive the shoddy camera quality, forgive my unscripted ramblings, but hopefully you can still have a good time with this video and pick up some handy tips. Today's video, as you can tell from the title, is how to do Briar lineage makeup. Now I've transformed myself a little bit, I've done my eyes, I've done my face, and I'm going to be teaching you all the ins and outs of Briar lineage makeup, so you can just sort of pick and choose what you want to do. Now this base, which I've started off with, this is the base of how I do my makeup before I get to all the Briar-y bits. So I've got, this is a look I sort of call Verishkan Glam. I've got very dark eyes. I'm going to go in with a nice bright red lip, which I think is brilliant. And if you would like a YouTube tutorial on how to do Verishkan Glam or other assorted Verishkan makeup looks, then just let me know and I'll do that for you. The most quintessential part of the Briar lineage and all of the Briar trappings, and my personal favourite to do, is bark. We are bark bleeders. And you know, it is the most common, and it's the one that most people want to go for when they play a Briar, and rightly so, because it looks really, really cool. But there are multiple ways to do it, and some look more aesthetically pleasing than others, and I'm going to teach you how to go through all of those. Now, the first thing you'll need is prosthetic bark, like this. Now, I got this from LARP Gems in a set of 3. They were in varying sizes. The biggest one being about the size of my entire cheek, and the smallest one being a soul guy. You can also cut them down to size to see, you know, what fits the sort of aesthetic that you're going for, but I kind of like them as they came. I got a really nice layout, so I'm going to teach you, first of all, how to apply them, and second of all, how to make them look really, really good. Now, the way I do bark is I don't just stick it on. I kind of don't like how that looks. That's my personal choice and personal opinion. But I like to create a cool green sort of aura emerging from underneath the bark, and I think that this leans quite nicely into the green veins trapping that the Briars have. And I think it makes it just look that bit more magical and just that bit more cool. It's like the idea of spring magic radiating from the bark, and I think it looks, it also blends it into the face a lot better. So I'm going to teach you the best way to do that. The palette I'm going to use is the Colourpop Just My Luck palette. Mine's a little bit beaten up because I've taken it to so many events, but I absolutely love it. It is the best palette that you can possibly get for doing Briar makeup, or, you know, just if you really like the colour green. It is actually really cheap and really, really high quality, but you do have to get it shipped in from America, so that can up the price. So all in all, this came to about £20 plus shipping, like £20 including shipping, and if you don't want to pay that, there are a lot of cheap alternatives. Either find green in another palette, or go searching for your individual shadows, but I think that this palette is the only palette that I've been able to find that has the spectrum that we need to create that really nice magical aura. So I do highly recommend splurging out on it, especially if you're thinking of playing a Briar for a really long time. So what we're going to do is we are going to take our bark. I'm going to take this colour here, Charmed, which is a really nice sort of browny, I don't want to say sludgy, but sludgy green. But I think it looks cute. And we're going to use that basically as our base shade, and that is going to be the shade that transitions between the bark and the sort of more emerald foresty greens that really get across that spring magic, because it's just such a nice shade between these colours, which we're going to use later, and the brown of the bark. So you're going to take a lot of that on a brush, and it's a brush that basically you can use to pack on colour. You don't really want to use a fluffy brush for this because it's not really going to do the job, because it'll create more of a faint outline, and you will see why. So you've got to take the bark piece, we're going to use this as our example, and we are going to just pop this on the skin wherever you want it. I recommend, if you're going on a cheek place, which is very popular because you've got a lot of space on your cheek, to make sure that this end piece is not in the vicinity of your mouth. Because if it is in the vicinity of your mouth, then what's going to happen is the spirit gum or whatever adhesive you're using is going to just sort of start to slowly peel throughout the day, and then you're going to end up with this sort of hanging off, which you don't want. So we're going to take this, and what basically we're going to do is we're going to just apply it at the tops, just the key points, and we're just going to map out the shape of where our bark sits on the face. Now we've got a lovely sort of map of where the bark's going to sit. You can take it away, save it for later. And what we're going to do is we're basically going to draw out and buff out and sort of create this nice aura around where the bark is. So now I've got this all mapped out. We're going to go in, and it's just really a case of just pressing the colour in. We're going in with Charmed, just going cute little circular motions, just all around. It doesn't have to be super neat. And you want to get it pretty much under the lines as well as out of the lines of where you're going to put your bark, because that way you don't have this horrible disconnect. It looks like the bark really is coming from, this aura really is coming in from underneath the bark, which is connected to your skin. So we're just going to go around that, and literally all I'm doing is just press and little circular motions all the way around. And you're just going to want to do that all the way around the shape of the bark. What I've done here is I've also made sure that the colour comes a little bit out from under the general space of where we're going to have our bark, and this is where we're going to do our blending. Quick bit of recommendation, if you are going in with this, even if you're not wearing a base of makeup, I would recommend putting a concealer or a foundation or some sort of base underneath this, because it will just help it blend, it will help the pigmentation come through, because otherwise you're just not really going to be able to see this super well. So what we're going to do now is we are going to take a fluffy brush, and we're going to go in with our more forest green colours. Now I like to take a mix of Mobamba, which is this one here, and Act Natural. Just going to take that on this brush, tap off the excess, and what we're going to do is we're not going to blend it out like we would an eyeshadow. We're going to keep very much on the line that we've already set with this makeup, and we're going to basically buff the two together. It's not about creating three separate distinct colours like you would with eyeshadow. It's creating sort of a homogeneous blob basically, but come up with a more aesthetic term for homogeneous blob. We're just going to buff it around and round and round, and again we're just keeping it really concise because you don't want it spreading too far out on your face, because then it just takes up the whole face. And that's not the most appealing. So see what I'm doing? Let's see how that creates this nice gradient. We want to do that all the way around, occasionally dipping back into Charmed just to reinforce that darker colour. so that you do get a sort of gradient. The lighting was not great, you couldn't sort of see the gradient, but if you look at that, it does sort of look like a wound, but it's supposed to. But you can sort of see the levels that we've created a whole lot better here. Now for the most important bit, the application of the bark itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our bark, we're going to take our adhesive. I use spirit gum. There are other adhesives available. They vary in price and quality. Personally, I think if you use spirit gum correctly and you use enough of it, you kind of don't really need anything else. At least that is my personal private way of looking at it. So what you want to do, you want to buy spirit gum with a brush first and foremost, because if you buy it with just the little tubes, it spills everywhere. You can't control where you're putting it or how much you're putting on, really. And that, I don't rate that. I think that's stupid. I've tried using it before. It sucks. So you want to take your brush, you want to take the back of your bark. Mine's a little bit scuzzy, but we'll ignore that. And you just want to brush it on bit by bit. You want to get a nice thick layer. If in doubt, use too much. Once you've got a nice thick layer of spirit gum, you just take a finger and just tap it. Just tap it until it gets gross and sticky. And you get these nice little peaks of spirit gum all over the surface, and it starts sticking to your finger. I think that PD should add something into the Empire Wiki that basically Briars also have sticky fingers, because I imagine a lot of Briars are spending a lot of time doing this with their prosthetics. So then you want to take your prosthetic, once it's all gross and sticky, you want to stick it to the top of your face. You want to go with the thickest part away from your mouth. And you just want to hold it in place. Just keep it there until it feels vaguely secure. Just push it, use force. Okay. And there you have it. Now, it's going to feel really loose, and it just will, and you just have to emotionally come to terms with that. But there you have a nice bit of bark glued to your face. There are lots of other trappings associated with the Briar lineage. Big ones are bright green eyes. You can buy contacts for that. I don't have any with me, so I'm not really going to do a tutorial on that, but there are lots of tutorials online of how to apply contacts. Still sticky. Another big one is veins. Now, I've seen these done in lots of really cool ways. I've seen people doing it on their hands, on their arms. My friend John Westcott, who plays Friar Jack Reed, who's a Marcher Briar, he has an eye patch, and the idea is that there's bark underneath the eye patch, but all you can see is these little veins. And that's really cool, because you get lots of Marchers that don't know he's a Briar initially, until they sort of look a little bit closer and see the veins coming out of his eyeball. That's so neat. I think that's brilliant. So I'm going to show you two different ways of doing things with veins. Which is basically, do you go with powder veins or liquid veins? The difference between a powder and a liquid, so a powder is eyeshadow, and a liquid is, say, a liquid liner or liquid lipstick that you're using, is basically the finish. I personally prefer powder because I think it gives it that under the skin look, but I think that liquid works just as well if that's your vibe, and especially if the only lineage trapping that you're going for is veins, then I think a bolder, sort of more distinct thing can work even better. So this is an example of how to do it with powder. You just take a little eyebrow brush, or a pencil brush will also do, but I find an angle brush works better. Just take your powder, go in with, I think, a more distinctly green version, so I'm going in with Mobamba here. Tap off the excess. Start over here, point first, because you want to create a nice point at the end. Just make it windy. Don't be afraid to go back in with powder. With powder, you are not going to get a line all in one. Just don't be afraid to go over your lines. And there you go, that's a pretty neat singular vein. It's quite distinctive. It's really cool. A really neat thing you can do is then do little offshoots. You want to create a nice sort of flicking motion with these. They sort of look like vines, isn't that cool? And you can even create offshoots from your offshoots. Isn't that neat? It's creeping up your face. Now this one doesn't work quite as well because it's not in a place where you would traditionally have veins. Like the arm, where you can sort of basically just trace the veins that are visible on your actual human skin. But I think this looks pretty cute. Obviously the same thing can be done with a liquid lip or eyeliner. Eyeliners are, I would say, even easier to apply because that's sort of what they're meant for. You can get a really good flick with them. They'll make for really distinctive things, but what I would recommend is keeping them in places where you would normally have visible veins. So down the neck, on the arms, that sort of thing. Liquid lips also work nicely, but these aren't going to apply as well. Because they tend to be a lot stickier, basically. They tend to be a lot thicker. You have to have a specific brush for them. What you shouldn't do is take this sort of liquid lip utensil and just go all over your face, because it'll just look super thick. There won't be much dimension to it. It's just not gonna give you that sort of thin, flicky, pinpointed look that you're going to want with veins. So I am going to finish this look with what I like to call a Varushkin red lip. Now I love this lipstick. It's a true red lipstick, and this is a sort of fashion choice that Sparrow has definitely taken from Yulia, who is the Varushkin senator for Mikarova, who Sparrow is currently proxy to. She always has this bright red lipstick and it looks amazing, so shout out there. And I think, and I see also a lot of other Varushkin women with a bright red lip, and I think it just suits the nation so well. So Sparrow's gonna start wearing it. That's another thing to talk about. It is really funny. Just a massive, as someone who plays a Briar, and for someone who's, so Sparrow is a Briar rights activist. She's part of the Briat, which is basically a group of random Briars from different nations who are sort of going around campaigning and being a massive nuisance to sort of, I guess, criminalise discrimination against Briars, which is cool and neat. And it's such a fun part of game, and we really like it, even though we're very aware that we're fighting a futile battle. But the thing is that we wouldn't have this part of game without people who are characters who are prejudiced against Briars, like the Talbots, and Talbots are a big one. I've had a lot of interactions with the Talbots and they've been absolutely incredible. And various Marcher and Highborn players, and Navari as well, oh my god. Especially that guy who was going around stabbing Briars, that was really interesting. That was really interesting to play around with. I got to do a fun speech in camp. But yeah, it's such a fun, like, the Briar game is sometimes a little bit controversial, and so I'm not going to get too much into it. But it is really fun, and it is also, it is an interesting line of story to engage with. And I think it's fun for a lot of people who play it. It isn't for everyone, because I think it can, for a lot of people, lead to a degree of alienation that is maybe just not fun for them, or certain interactions that aren't fun for them. But for some people, it really is, and it's an interesting thing to play around, and it's just another fantasy hurdle that your character is going to have to overcome, you know, and it's a tough thing to sign on to, but for those of us who have signed on to it, and the people who play Briars, and I mean, obviously, playing a Briar is not necessarily consent to engage with that specific part of game, so obviously if you're thinking of playing a lineagist, make sure that what you're saying is okay with the person, you know, make sure you're not overstepping any IRL boundaries, but for those of us who, you know, do visibly consent to that sort of thing and do actively sort of engage with that game and poke it, it is really excellent. So thank you, lineagists, it's really fun. And yeah, this is our finished look in lovely sunsetty lighting. Let me know what you guys think, and also let me know what other videos you would like to see. Brilliant. Okay, hopefully see you in the next one.